They say two wrongs don't make a right, but what about when the first wrong shatters your world? When I found out my husband cheated, something inside me broke and something darker woke up. And in the end, I didn't just get even. I went further, much further. I used to think our marriage was bulletproof. 15 years together, 2 kids, a comfortable home in the suburbs, the kind of life people envy from the outside. I was the wife who baked for the neighbors, who planned family vacations, who made sure the holidays felt magical. But the thing about perfect-looking lives, they hide the ugliest secrets. It started one Thursday afternoon. I was doing laundry when I noticed the faintest scent of perfume on Daniel's shirt, not mine, not the kind I wear, not anything I recognized. It was sweet, almost too sweet, and it clung to the fabric like it belonged there. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe someone brushed past him at work, but something in my gut tightened. That night, while he was in the shower, I went through his phone. I'd never done that before. My hands shook as I opened his messages, scrolling past work chats and family threads, until I saw her name, Melissa. No last name, just a string of heart emojis next to it. The first message I opened made my stomach drop. Last night was amazing. I can still taste you. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I put the phone down, walked out to the porch, and sat there in the cold night air, staring at nothing. When he came out, towel wrapped around his waist, he smiled like nothing was wrong, like my world hadn't just tilted on its axis. And that's when something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him, not yet. I just decided if he could betray me so easily, then maybe I could break the rules too. Only I wouldn't just cheat. I'd make sure my betrayal cut deeper than his ever could. For the next week, I played the part of the oblivious wife. I kissed him goodbye in the morning, asked about his day at dinner, even laughed at his terrible dad jokes, all while memorizing the way he lied to me so effortlessly. But behind the smile, I was studying him, watching for patterns the late nights, the sudden urgent work calls, the way he'd keep his phone face down on the counter. I wasn't just looking for proof anymore. I was looking for an opening. I didn't have to look far. Daniel's best friend, Chris, had been part of our lives for years. He was single, charming, and just dangerous enough to make every woman notice him when he walked into a room. And I knew deep down that Chris had always had a soft spot for me. Little lingering glances, the way his smile would change when I walked in. We'd never crossed a line until now. I'd never even thought about it. But the night after Daniel told me he'd be working late again, Chris texted me, "You okay? You seemed quiet last time I saw you." And that's when the idea took root. If Daniel could throw away 15 years for some woman I'd never met, I could destroy his comfort zone from the inside. I could make my revenge personal, and who better than his closest friend? I didn't respond right away. I let the thought marinate, knowing the next move had to be perfect. This wasn't about a fling. This was about making Daniel feel the exact kind of betrayal that kept me awake at night. The following weekend, I invited Chris over under the pretense of needing help with a leaky faucet. Daniel was away on business. I wore a loose-off, a shoulder sweater, no bra, hair a little messier than usual. It wasn't accidental. When Chris walked in and saw me, his eyes lingered just long enough to tell me he noticed. And as I led him to the kitchen, part of me felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. And another part whispered that I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. Part 3 is where the tension will spike, the small touches, the lingering pauses, the first undeniable sign that she's about to take it further than she originally planned. Chris was kneeling under the sink, fiddling with the pipes, when I caught myself watching the way his shirt pulled against his shoulders. My pulse was unsteady, not because I was in love, but because I felt powerful. He looked up at me mid-task, smirking. "You're staring," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. I rolled my eyes, "Just making sure you're doing it right." But there was an undercurrent in my voice I didn't bother hiding. A slow burn, the kind that made the air between us heavier. When he finished, we sat at the kitchen counter talking over coffee. He leaned in just a little too close. His knee brushed mine. It could have been an accident, but I didn't move. Instead, I let the contact linger, and then he asked, "Where's Daniel tonight?" That name, in that moment, felt like a trigger. I could feel the bitterness rising in my throat. "Working late, again." My tone made it clear there was more to the story, but I didn't explain. Chris studied me for a moment, his eyes darker than usual. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" I gave a small, humorless laugh. "I'm not sure you want to know." His hand slid across the counter, resting over mine. Warm, steady, intentional, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just a plan anymore, it was a temptation I could taste. I told myself I was still in control, that I was just leading him along for the sake of revenge. But when he said, "You deserve better than whatever's making you look like that," I felt my walls crack. I didn't kiss him, not yet, but I didn't move my hand away either, and in that charged silence, we both knew we were already past the point of pretending this was harmless. The next Friday, Daniel had another late meeting. I didn't even ask who was there or what time he'd be home. I'd stopped caring about his lies the day I found out the truth, but tonight I was about to create my own. Chris came over under the pretense of fixing the loose door hinge. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the world outside feel like a secret you're not part of. When he stepped inside, his jacket dripping, he gave me that look again, the one that wasn't just friendly. I offered him a towel and a drink, and when his fingers brushed mine, my chest tightened. We sat in the living room. The thunder outside was almost cinematic. He leaned back, stretching, and his hand rested along the back of the couch, inches from my shoulder. "You've been quiet tonight," he said softly. I turned to him, meeting his eyes. "Do you ever do something just because you want to, even if you know you shouldn't?" His smirk faded into something heavier. "All the time," he replied. That was it, the shift. The moment the thin thread of morality between us finally snapped, I leaned in first, close enough to feel his breath. My heart was pounding, not from love, but from the intoxicating mix of anger and power. Chris closed the gap, his lips crashing into mine, and I didn't hesitate. It wasn't tender, it wasn't gentle. It was a collision, years of his curiosity meeting my simmering rage at Daniel. Clothes weren't fully shed, not yet. But hands wandered, touches lingered in places they shouldn't, and every second felt like an irreversible step deeper into something I couldn't take back. When it was over, we sat there breathing heavily, neither of us saying a word. I half expected guilt to show up right then, but instead I felt a dangerous calm, because now it wasn't just Daniel who had crossed the line. I had too, and I was already wondering how far I'd be willing to take it. The next morning, I woke up before Daniel. I made coffee the same way I always did, as if nothing had happened the night before. It was almost unsettling how normal it all felt, no trembling hands. No shame, just control. Daniel stumbled into the kitchen, yawning, his phone glued to his hand. "Late night?" I asked casually. He gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, meetings ran over. Meetings." Right, I played along, sipping my coffee, letting him think his lie was still intact. But in my head, I was replaying every second with Chris, not because I missed it, but because it felt like my own private weapon. That weekend, Chris texted me. It wasn't about door hinges this time. "Chris, can't stop thinking about you." Me, "You shouldn't." Chris, "Doesn't mean I'll stop." The boldness in his words was addictive. Every ping of my phone was like a little jolt of adrenaline. We didn't meet right away. I made him wait, partly because I enjoyed the control, partly because I wanted Daniel to sink further into his own secrets. And he did. I noticed him smiling at texts, slipping away to take phone calls, coming home later and later. It was almost poetic, both of us playing the same game, neither admitting it. The difference was, Daniel thought he was ahead. One night, about a week later, Chris came over again. This time, I didn't wait for rain or an excuse. The second he walked in, I locked the door behind him. There were no polite exchanges, no pretense of neighborly visits. It was reckless, messy, and nothing like the life I'd been living for years. And in that chaos, I realized something. I wasn't just getting back at Daniel. I was discovering a part of myself that had been buried under years of loyalty to someone who didn't deserve it. When Chris left that night, I stood in the doorway watching him walk away. And I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Daniel wasn't stupid, self-absorbed, yes, blind, absolutely not. One night over dinner, he looked at me just a little too long, like he was searching for something in my face. "You've been different lately," he said. I kept my fork moving, not meeting his eyes. "Different how?" He hesitated. "I don't know. Happier, I guess. More distracted." The irony almost made me laugh. Distracted? Daniel had been distracted. For months, just not by me. I shrugged, giving him the most nonchalant smile I could muster. Maybe I'm just finally doing things for myself. That statement hung in the air like a hidden blade. He didn't know what I meant, but he felt it. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way he suddenly changed the subject. Later that week, Chris and I met again. This time, we didn't even use my house. I went to him, his apartment, his world. Crossing that threshold felt like crossing a point of no return. It wasn't just physical anymore. We talked for hours about Daniel, about life, about things I'd never said out loud. He listened in a way Daniel hadn't in years, but with that intimacy came danger. The more Chris knew, the more he could use against me, and part of me liked that risk. Back home, Daniel was suddenly making more effort cooking dinner, complimenting me, even suggesting a weekend trip. But it was too late. His sudden interest wasn't a rekindled love, it was suspicion. And the worst part, he had no idea just how far I'd already gone. It started small. Daniel began forgetting. Things he never used to forget, like which nights he had to work late, or what time his gym sessions ended. Almost like he was checking if I'd notice, or if I'd slip. One night, he came home earlier than usual. I was fresh out of the shower, hair damp, wearing a robe. His eyes scanned me quick, calculating. "Who were you with?" The question was casual in tone but sharp underneath. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. I just showered." "Yeah, you smell different." He stepped closer, inhaling like a predator catching a scent. I smiled, slow, deliberate. "It's a new body wash. Do you like it?" He didn't answer. From that moment, every conversation with him felt like a chess game. He'd drop little questions. "So, what do you do today?" or anyone call while I was gone. Each time, I had to decide whether to play dumb or feed him just enough truth to keep him guessing. But Chris was different. He wasn't just an escape anymore, he was an addiction. Every time Daniel probed, it only pushed me closer to him. Then came the night Daniel crossed his own line. I found his phone, left unlocked on the counter. The first message on the screen made my heart pound, not from shock, but from validation. It was a text to her, the same woman he'd cheated with before. They'd never stopped. I stood there, robe half open, dripping water on the tile. And I smiled, because now I didn't have to hide my sins. I could burn everything down. I didn't confront him right away. No, that would have been too easy for him. Men like Daniel thrive on drama. They twist it, spin it, make you the crazy one. Instead, I decided to let him feel the truth. The next weekend, I told him I had a girls' night. I put on the red dress, the one he used to call dangerous, but instead of going to my friends, I went straight to Chris. We didn't just spend the night together, we made sure there was evidence. A scarf in my bag that wasn't mine, a faint cologne scent on my hair, a tiny love bite, hidden just enough to be discovered if Daniel looked hard enough. When I got home the next morning, Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, eyes locked on me. "Have fun?" he asked. I didn't flinch. "Yeah, best night I've had in a long time." His jaw flexed, that little muscle twitching like it did when he was holding back rage. But I didn't give him a chance to explode. I walked right past him, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "I know about her, and I'm not sorry." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. But under it, I could feel the shift. I wasn't the one being interrogated anymore. He was, and the best part, he didn't even know the full extent of what I'd done. Not yet. Daniel didn't speak for almost a full minute. Just stared at me, like he was trying to decide whether to yell, laugh, or throw something. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and smirked. "So that's what this is, tit for tat." I tilted my head. "No, Daniel, this is me finally matching your energy." He chuckled a low, bitter sound and rubbed his jaw. "You think I care? You think I haven't. Done worse." I walked around the table, close enough that he could smell Chris's cologne on my hair. "Oh, Daniel, I'm not trying to hurt you." I paused, then smiled coldly. "I'm trying to ruin you." His eyes narrowed, that smug confidence started to crack. "What the hell does that mean?" I sat across from him, folding my hands like we were negotiating a business deal. "You know that promotion you've been working toward, the one that requires a clean image, no scandals." He stiffened. "What are you getting at?" I leaned forward. "Chris works in your building, and let's just say he knows people who know everything about you and your little extracurricular activities." The color drained from his face. For the first time, Daniel wasn't the one holding the upper hand. "You wouldn't," he said, voice low. "Daniel," I whispered, smiling. "I already did." Daniel shot up from his chair so fast it scraped against the tile. "You've lost your damn mind," he shouted, pacing like a caged animal. I didn't flinch. In fact, I felt calm. Maybe it was the months, no, years of feeling small, betrayed, and humiliated finally boiling into something sharp and steady. "You did this," I said quietly. "You thought you could treat me like an option, like some background character in your little soap opera, and I'd just sit here and take it. But guess what, Daniel? I learned from the best." He stopped pacing, his eyes flashing with a mixture of fear and fury. "If you think you can take me down, you better be ready for the fallout. You won't come out clean in this." I laughed, an honest, unrestrained laugh that seemed to rattle him more than anything. "Clean, Daniel." I stopped worrying about clean the second I found those texts. "This isn't about clean. This is about even." He took a step toward me, jaw clenched. "You think Chris is going to protect you. He's using you." I stood, meeting him eye to eye. "Maybe he is. But unlike you, he didn't promise me forever and then throw it away for a quick thrill. And unlike you, he doesn't underestimate me." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind where the air feels thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. Finally, Daniel shook his head and muttered, "You're gonna regret this." I tilted my head, smiling faintly. "Maybe. But tonight, you'll regret it more." Daniel stormed out that night, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I just sat there, still holding my wine glass, listening to his tires screech out of the driveway. Part of me expected guilt to wash over me the moment he was gone, that heavy, sinking feeling that makes you want to take it all back. But it didn't come. Instead, there was this strange, intoxicating calm. I pulled out my phone. Chris had already texted. Chris, so he knows. Me, yep, and he's furious. Chris, good. Maybe he'll finally understand what it feels like. The thing about Chris was, he wasn't innocent either. When he found out Daniel had been cheating, he'd seen an opening. He made himself the shoulder to cry on, knowing exactly where that road would lead, and I, lonely, bitter, and craving attention, didn't fight it. The next morning, I woke to chaos. Daniel had apparently confronted her, the woman he'd been seeing. Word traveled fast in our small circle, and by 9 a.m., mutual friends were already blowing up my phone. Some were shocked, some were disgusted, and a few were secretly thrilled to see the perfect couple's facade shatter. I didn't respond to anyone. I just sipped my coffee, scrolled through the messages, and waited. Because I knew Daniel, he wasn't just going to take this lying down, and the first shot he fired would tell me exactly how far this was about to go. It didn't take long. By noon, Daniel's post was up on Facebook, a picture of me and Chris at a bar from months ago, the caption dripping with venom. Guess I wasn't the only one who strayed. Some people believe in payback, others just go too far. The comments exploded. Family, friends, co-workers, all weighing in, half of them defending him, half of them shaming both of us. And there it was, the public humiliation he wanted. I should have been devastated. Instead, I smirked. Because Daniel didn't realize I still had my own ammunition. Later that day, I sent him a single text. If you think this is bad, remember, I know about Chicago. Chicago, the trip he'd taken for work, where he'd actually stayed 3 nights in a hotel with her. I had receipts, pictures, and even a voicemail she'd left him. Within minutes, my phone rang. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, just said, "You wouldn't." I didn't answer. The silence was my weapon now. That night, Chris came over. We didn't touch. We didn't even talk much. We just sat there, drinking, while my phone buzzed with Daniel's desperate attempts to call. And that's when I realized this wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was a war, and neither of us was backing down. The war didn't last much longer. 3 days after my silent threat, Daniel showed up at my door. No warning, no call, just him, standing there in the same sweatshirt I'd seen him wear on our first date, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I don't want this anymore," he said. "Not the marriage, not the fighting, not the games. We destroyed each other. For a moment, I almost let myself believe he was there to fix things. But then he added, 'Let's just end it before we do something we can't undo.'" I laughed because we were already past that point. The man who once swore he'd never hurt me had been the first to cross the line. And me, I didn't just cross it. I ran miles past it and lit the bridge behind me on fire. We signed the divorce papers 2 weeks later. No alimony, no messy court battles, just nothing. Chris faded out of my life too, once there was no revenge to fuel us. Now, months later, I sometimes lie awake at night, replaying every moment, the discovery, the affair, the texts, the lies. And I ask myself, did I do it to hurt him, or did I do it because a part of me wanted to prove I could be just as cruel? The truth is, it doesn't matter, because in the end, neither of us won. We just left each other with scars no one else will ever see. And maybe that's the real punishment.